but it's because Ruby Doris has looked at it. Now, Ruby was amazing. I mean, that's what was amazing. I come into the national office, I come into this amazing group of passionate, really smart organizers, who are part of these local movements all over the place. So Ruby Doris Smith Robinson is, which I knew as Ruby Doris Smith at that point, is coming out of the Freedom Rides, but the Atlanta Student Movement, but also has done 30 days jail, no bail in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And so I knew this history when I'm coming into these people. I never said a word in staff meetings. I took the minutes, but it was like I was in awe of all of these young people who had just done this incredible amount of work, and knew things I just did not know. So Ruby Doris Smith Robinson Ruby Doris Smith was also in the Atlanta office. Yeah. Ooh. Oh, and I should say somebody about the print shop. I forgot the print shop. Okay. And I should also mention, I mentioned the research department, which was headed by Jack Minnis, and we always had research. I mean, Jack could get research from a stone. This is before Wikipedia, before computers, and this is so that when we went into a community, number one, when we went in a community, we knew if there was a board of trade, usually not, but at least you knew who the movers and shakers were. So it wasn't just the Klan who's trying to get you, it's the White Citizens Council, it's the bankers, it's the people who own the gin mill, it's all of the people who own things in that local community. And what Minnis always did was to find out who owns this town. And so when we were in Danville, for example, Bobby Yancey, who was the fundraiser, and also Dick Gregory's wife, Lillian, bought stock at they bought stock at Dan River Mills, so that at a stockholder meeting, they could say, we are a stockholder and we object to because Danville was vicious, and it was prompted by all the horribleness of Dan River Mills. So there was that, but they also, at the Tottle House, both Bobby and Lillian, Dick Gregory's wife, bought stock at the Tottle House. So again, they could mention, and I think it's certainly the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but if I'm not mistaken, also New York Times, mentioned the fact that when Bobby and Lillian got arrested at the Tottle House, they said, we are stockholders of this restaurant chain. Now, when I got arrested with a group of folks at the Tottle House, we had not yet bought forget that, I'm still on research. So at research, what Jack Minnis always did was to find out who owns the town. But he also did a lot of the research that we used when we went into Mississippi to do a chronology of violence and intimidation in Mississippi from 61 to 64 when the Mississippi Freedom Summit started. And that was to show it's not just an isolated racist cop. It's systemic. It's a system of racist police brutality. So, and you could see that. And always there was research that underpinned everything that we did. So that came out of that research department. But then there was the print shop and Wilson Brown, who I think had come out of Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. And Tommy Owakiyama, who had come out of Canada, Japanese-Canadian, and Mark Suckle. I mean, there were just all kinds of folks operating out of that national office, helping to pump up, getting the word out about what was happening in all of SNCC's projects.
And then what was the difference between SNCC, CORE? Well, SNCC differed between CORE and SCLC. Mm-hmm. What was the difference?
Less so with CORE, more so with SCLC. With SNCC, first of all, we were the only national youth organization within the civil rights movement, the only one. We were started by it out of the amazing intelligence of Miss Ella Baker, but also we were the only ones run by young people. So everything was run by people who were 18, 19, 20 years old. Julian used to say he was the old man at 20. Now, Minnis was separate. He was older, and Jim Foreman was older. But everybody else was my age, 18, 19, 20. And we were also black-led. Now, CORE And I should also say, by the time I come in, we are tactically nonviolent. So the Nashville movement, where you had, where people were philosophically nonviolent, which is no matter what anybody does to me, I will not respond with violence because philosophically I do not believe in that. So that's John Lewis, that's Diane Nash, it's Bernard Lafayette. But by the time I get there, first of all, they're not in the national office. And most of them were not ever anyway. So so we're not philosophically nonviolent. We are tactically nonviolent, which is to say that the other side has more guns. And what you're trying to do is to get black people registered to vote without getting them killed. You don't want to endanger them by bogarting and saying, I'm going to shoot you back. No, because you won't get your aim fulfilled. And you don't want to get half of the black community offed by these violent racists. So our main thing was we understood self-defense, though. We always understood that. And many of us feel that, the reason that we survived it was because the people we stayed with and who nurtured us and taught us had guns. Most of them were in rural Mississippi, Alabama, Southwest Georgia, and they used them for hunting. But they also used them to protect themselves and to protect us. But it was always self-defense. It was not aggressive. So Hartman Turnbow, shoots at people who are coming on his farm. And Stokely often talked about, as soon as you got within, half a mile of Hartman Turnbow's land, you were safe because nobody came on Hartman Turnbow, As a matter of fact, one of the SNCC people who worked in Mississippi, Charlie Cobb, just did a wonderful book on self-defense in the Southern movement. So, and you get it all the way. A lot of people talk about this. So we are first of all not philosophically nonviolent by the time I get there. We are black-led. We are all young people, and we are non-hierarchical. Now, CORE was not hierarchical, but SCLC was. They are black ministers of the Baptist Church, and so they are used to a certain hierarchy. We did not operate that way. I mean, we operated by consensus. And as Diane often said, Diane Nash said, when she was talking about the Nashville student movement, she said, we would talk until 2 or 3 in the morning because what we were doing meant that you could be killed. And so when people's lives are on the line, you want to make sure that everybody, if they don't agree with the decision, the rules of consensus say, at least you will abide by the rules of the majority. You talk for a while. And then if you cannot reach a majority vote, then you do it by consensus. And so, no, if you cannot reach consensus, then you do it by majority vote. So, which is the reason that SNCC staff meetings went on forever. Joyce Ladner, who came out of the Mississippi movement, said, some SNCC people could argue with a lamppost, she said, which was true. And everybody had political positions, and everybody thought they were right. But you had to get that out because people's lives were on the line. So it wasn't that anybody, so SCLC was hierarchical, and they also had a charismatic leader, which was important for them, but did not work for us. Our point, because of the way Ms. Baker talked, and Ms. Baker had been, director of branches for the NAACP. She had been the first executive secretary with SCLC. She was a supporter of the Montgomery bus boycott, Northern support for Montgomery bus boycott. But what she says at the SNCC organizing committee is, don't align with any of the adult organizations. And so at that first meeting that she calls, SNCC people decide not to go into CORE, not to go be youth chapters of the NAA, not to be part of SCLC, but to be standalone. And part of that was because Ms. Baker's thing is, you are not the leaders. You SNCC people are not the leaders. You are developing leadership in each of these communities that will withstand even your own deaths. It will continue beyond whatever happens to you because the local leadership is so strong. Our feeling was you don't get that as much when you have a charismatic leader. So we are all those things, but CORE tended to be primarily white when it first started. although when we worked with a lot of the black organizers, certainly in Mississippi. I mean, Dave Dennis is there, and Rudy Lombard, and Jerome, and, all these, Fluky, I mean, they're all core people, and there was no difference on the local level. And certainly you see it in the freedom rides, I mean, SNCC through Diane and the national movement continue those rides when CORE decides that, it's just too dangerous because of what happens in Birmingham. But it was easier, and even with SCLC on the ground, you didn't get that, you didn't get any conflict, It was only because we really did believe that it had to be beyond mobilization, that you had to have strong grassroots leaders, and that grassroots leadership is what you were really trying to develop, that, again, would survive even your deaths. So it wasn't about bringing 20,000 people into Selma to, go across the Pettus Bridge, because that's then gone. And the other problem we had was that it then takes the onus off the local organizers, who think that you have to keep looking outside the local community to get anything done. And we wanted folks to understand, you've got the power. You can change this. You got to get together with your neighbors and your church, your churches, and get all of that together, but you don't have to keep looking to the north to get, saviors coming down. So, yeah, there was a different operating style.
And then,
But except on the local level, where folks just, were tight.
now speak on the, I guess, sit-in?
Yes.
Yes, the sit-in that you were talking about earlier, and you said Charles and Chuck.
Yes.
That you said were a part of.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. There were a few sit-ins that I was involved in Atlanta. The one that there's a photo of that I understand is now in the Atlanta National Airport. I haven't seen it because I hate the Atlanta Airport. But the one that's in the Atlanta Airport is of a sit-in, and you can see me staring vacantly into space. I mean, I'm looking at camera. I've got a clipboard because I was going to take the names down of everybody who got arrested. And so I'm there. Chuck is there from the Freedom Singers, Chuck Neblett. You would see next to me Joyce Ladner, who comes out of the Mississippi student movement, and then becomes, of course, a famous sociologist. You would see at one of the other pieces of the negative, you would see Marion Barry, who becomes mayor of Washington, D.C. for 4 terms. You would see Ivanhoe Donaldson, who becomes his deputy mayor. You'd see Charlie Cobb, who also was another Mississippi organizer.